what's more twisted? Drilling holes in your skull to cure headaches, eating your dead relatives, or turning living people's ribs into wings? Buckle up, because these aren't sick fantasies, they're actual historical practices that shaped human civilization. Viking Blood Eagle. The Vikings weren't just raiders and seafarers, no, they were masters of psychological warfare, and nothing embodies their brutality quite like the Blood Eagle ritual. Picture this, a high-ranking enemy, bound and conscious, about to experience one of history's most horrific executions. Their back is carved open, ribs systematically snapped and wrenched outward like wings. It's basically the world's worst chiropractic adjustment. But that's not even the worst part. The grand finale, their still beating lungs pull through the wounds and draped across those makeshift wings. Yeesh, talk about giving someone wings. And no, Red Bull wasn't involved. This wasn't just random savagery. The Blood Eagle was the ultimate revenge, a blood sacrifice to Odin, the god of war himself, reserved for only the most hated enemies and traitors. It sent an unmistakable message: challenge the Vikings and your death will become legend. Think about the raw psychological terror. You're alive, fully conscious, watching your own ribs being transformed into grotesque wings. The physical agony is beyond imagination. But the mental torture? That's what made the Blood Eagle a masterpiece of medieval horror. The ritual's impact was so profound that its legacy still haunts us today. The Vikings didn't just kill their enemies, they turned their deaths into nightmarish spectacles that would echo through centuries. Aztec Flesh Feast. The Aztecs weren't just fierce warriors and brilliant architects, they were cannibals. And this wasn't some desperate measure during famines. No, this was a carefully planned religious ritual, performed right in the heart of their magnificent empire. Talk about having people over for dinner. Picture this, you're a captured warrior being dragged up the steps of a towering pyramid. Above you, priests in elaborate costumes wait, with obsidian knives sharp enough to slice through flesh like butter. These aren't just any sacrifices, they're feasts for the gods themselves. Okay, the ritual begins, the priests pin you down on a stone altar, and with practiced precision, slice open your chest. Your still beating heart is ripped out and offered to Huitzilopochtli, the sun god who demands this bloody tribute to keep shining. But here's the truly shocking part. Your death is just the beginning. Your body is carried down the pyramid, but it's not for burial. Instead, you're about to become a holy feast. Congratulations on your promotion from warrior to main course. Your flesh is carefully prepared and distributed among the priests and nobility. In their minds, by consuming your flesh, they're absorbing your strength and participating in a sacred communion with their gods. This wasn't some outlier practice, it was state policy. The Aztecs waged wars specifically to capture prisoners for these rituals. To their enemies, the threat wasn't just death, it was becoming a literal meal for their captors. This fearsome reputation helped maintain their empire through sheer terror. Holy head holes. Ever wondered what ancient people did for a headache? They drilled a hole in their skull. Trepanation, humanity's oldest surgical practice, was their solution to everything. Got a headache? Drill a hole. Evil spirits? Drill a hole. Using sharp rocks and primitive drills, they cut through skulls to expose their brain, all without anesthetics. Yikes. Picture a caveman with a flintstone chiseling away at your noggin while infection risks loomed. The procedure was a community spectacle. You're in a dusty hut surrounded by chanting villagers as someone plays tic-tac-toe on your cranium. Some believe it granted wisdom, while others saw it as their only hope for healing trauma. Here's the shocking part. Many survived. Archaeological evidence shows heel trepanation marks, proving patients live long after. But the risks were astronomical. Infection, blood loss, and brain damage were common. Walking around with a hole in your head made you either the village celebrity or the village idiot. Ancient cultures blended primitive medicine with spiritual beliefs, convinced that drilling holes in skulls could mend both body and soul. In their world, this was cutting-edge medicine. Apparently, their version of mind-blowing medical advances was a bit more literal than ours. Who thought this was a good idea? Foot binding Folly. Picture this, you're a young girl in ancient China and your family thinks it's a swell idea to turn your feet into living pretzels. Welcome to foot binding, where beauty is pain, literally. This twisted practice lasted over 1,000 years, all for feet no larger than 3 inches. The process, take a 6-year-old girl, break her foot's arch, fold it in half, curl the toes under, wrap it tighter than a Christmas present, and you thought braces were bad. The result? Stunted, disfigured stumps. But these deformed feet were your ticket to marriage. The smaller your feet, the richer your husband. Cinderella's glass slipper? Yeah, more like a torture device. This badge of honor came with a price. Women could barely walk. Infections festered, bones fractured, many developed gangrene leading to amputation or death. Yet mothers still bound their daughters' feet, believing this torture would secure their future. Probably history's worst mothers knows best moment. The most shocking part? Yeah, this wasn't some fringe practice, it was beauty culture's darkest expression, where maternal love meant deliberately crippling your daughter for social status. DIY mummies. Imagine willingly mummifying yourself alive. Welcome to Soku Shinbutsu, Japanese Buddhist monks who turned themselves into living mummies for enlightenment during the 11th century. These monks followed a lethal 3-step process. First, 1,000 days of nuts and seeds, deliberately starving their bodies to eliminate fat and muscle. Then they consumed only tree bark and roots, further depleting themselves. The final stage, drinking poisonous urushi tree sap tea, literally pickling their organs from the inside. Ugh. Probably not the kind of cleanse your local wellness guru had in mind. They entered a student's home with just a bell and breathing tube. When the bell stopped ringing, signaling death, the tube was removed, sealing them inside forever. Success meant perfect preservation, a self-made mummy revered as a living Buddha. The process involved excruciating pain, slow starvation, and deliberate poisoning. Think that's extreme dedication? Over 24 of these perfectly preserved monk mummies exist today in Japan. How far would you go for your beliefs? Feline Firefest. Welcome to medieval France, where superstition ran wild and fear turned cats into burning sacrifices. Picture this, a world where cats, especially black ones, were seen as the devil's minions, witches' sidekicks, and direct links to the underworld. In town squares across France, crowds gathered for a twisted spectacle. They'd pile cats into wicker baskets, hoist them over roaring bonfires, and cheer as the animals burned alive. Jeez, even kings and nobles participated in this macabre ritual, their presence legitimizing the horror. Why such cruelty? Medieval communities blame cats for everything from failed crops to sudden illnesses. Apparently, medieval logic went something like this. My crops failed? Must be those cats plotting against me. My milk went sour? Definitely those cats holding midnight meetings about it. These weren't just isolated incidents, they were organized festivals of torture, where intelligent, sensitive creatures endured unimaginable pain while crowds celebrated below. It was the medieval version of fireworks, but with screaming animals instead of sparkles. This wasn't just about killing cats, it was a reflection of how fear could drive an entire society to commit atrocities in the name of protection. The irony? A few years later, when the rat-carry plague hit Europe, they probably wished they'd kept those cats around. Don't make the same mistake, hit subscribe now. Trust me, it's better than dealing with the Black Death. When terrified of the unknown, humans resorted to burning the innocent. Syphilis Shenanigans. It's the early 20th century and doctors are playing mad scientists with mental health treatment. The miracle cure they landed on? Syphilis, the STD that makes you rethink your dating choices. Desperate to treat general paresis, a severe mental illness from late-stage syphilis, doctors thought, hey, if we can't cure syphilis, let's fight it with something worse. Enter their solution, deliberately infecting patients with malaria. It's like setting your house on fire to kill termites. The hope? That fever would roast the syphilis bacteria. Sometimes it worked. The trade-off? Severe convulsions, organ damage, and a 50% survival rate. Say it with me now. Yikes. Patient consent was as solid as a politician's promise. Most didn't know what they were signing up for, basically entering a boss fight with malaria while their syphilis watched from the sidelines with popcorn. The kicker? This malaria-induced madness won a Nobel Prize in 1927. What? Because nothing says advancing medical science quite like introducing your patients to two deadly diseases and letting them duke it out. They gave a medal for weaponizing malaria. Cannibalism Chaos. Ever heard of the 4 people who ate their dead relatives? Ew. Their ritual cannibalism unleashed a devastating epidemic that made victims laugh themselves to death in Papua New Guinea. When family members died, they didn't bury them. They consumed them, believing it would preserve their spirits. Jeez, talk about taking keeping your loved ones close to a whole new level. But this touching family custom turned fatal. The killer? Kuru, a brain-melting disease spread by eating infected human brains. The symptoms were horrifying: uncontrollable tremors, maniacal laughter, and inevitable death. Picture someone laughing hysterically, not from joy, but because their brain was literally disintegrating. Within a year, victims couldn't stand, eat, or function. Whole communities were wiped out. The disease targeted women and children most severely, decimating entire generations. Scientists discovered the culprit: prions, rogue proteins that triggered a cascade of neurological destruction when consumed. By the 1950s, the epidemic had devastated the tribe, killing nearly all women and children in some areas. The 4 sacred ritual meant to honor their dead had become their destruction. If you thought this was intense, wait till you see what's next. The stakes are higher, the chills go deeper, and the twists, oh, they're about to get insane. You'll want to be there for every second. I'll see you there.